For those who are not from Mexico, welcome to Mexico City. We have the pleasure to have two guests from Mexico and one guest from London. Nonetheless, we're all very international, and we wanted to address a little bit the idea of coming into Latin America from the point of view of a Forex or a merchant or any business dealing into Latin America. But before I do that, let me introduce some of our panel. My name is Alex Pereira. I'm from PayPros. We are a payment processing, call it aggregator, payment facilitator in Latin America. We are based out of Uruguay, but we have offices in most countries in LatAm, including Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Peru, Brazil. We are mainly focused on more of the high-risk clients, especially Forex, of course. And that's something that, we differentiate ourselves a little bit in general from other payment processors, is that we really address the needs of high-risk clients, and they're very specific. And it's not just because the environment of the processing is high risk, but the actual everything around treating clients of high risk or this type of clientele requires more hands-on approach and structured and I guess in a way more compliant and better processing service. And part of what we've done is facilitate that entry into Latin America. But let me continue a little bit here. Obviously, let's start with Horacio and then Adán and Matt. If you guys introduce yourselves briefly.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. My name is Horacio Coutiño. I am the multi-asset strategist for Exante. Exante is an European broker with its own proprietary trading platform. We have presence in the UK, Europe, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Hong Kong. It's exciting to be here. It's an exciting time to talk about financial markets and what's been going on these past few trading sessions. I'll look forward to talking to you about that, and I think that's it for me.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Alex, and thank you everybody for attending this event. My name is Adán Hernández. I represent 360T Deutsche Börse Group. We are a German fintech company. My position is head of FX LatAm, North LatAm region, mostly. That's the region I'm responsible for. So our company provides services to different segments, FX segments in the market, from the corporate segment to the institutional one, passing through regional banks, local banks, central banks, including. So I'm very happy to be here. I hope to contribute with the topics that will be discussed during 40 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, for hosting us. Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Smith. I'm the Group CEO and Chairman of EC Markets. EC Markets is a Forex and CFD broker. We are regulated in 7 different jurisdictions, including the UK, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Seychelles, Mauritius, Dubai. We have offices in 5 different locations also. And I am delighted to be here today with my team. We're beginning to start up our whole business in Latin America. And as you can see, we've started sponsoring things here as well. So pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Well, one thing that I wanted to start, and it's more of a very general question, and I wanted to set up a little bit of how and what's been your experience and from your clients. You have obviously international clients. What has been the experience coming into Latin America? And before that, we want to make sure that we put it into context. Latin America is a very diverse continent. Yes, mostly speak Spanish, except Brazil. But the Spanish is just about the only thing, and maybe Catholicism, about the only thing that really unites us. The cultural differences between Argentina, Mexico, Colombia. There's notable differences in terms of the approach, the consumers, and again, cultural differences. So what would you guys say has been the biggest challenge for companies like you guys represent that are foreign companies entering a region like Latin America? And Adán, let's start with you because, we discussed this briefly.
Thank you so much. So I joined 360T 10 years ago. Before that, I used to work for the local banking system, providing FX services and derivatives as well. So the first challenge I faced was how to position my brand 360T while other very well reputed brands, too mostly, were very well established in Mexico. So our culture is a little bit reluctant to accept something new. That is, I think, that is a crucial factor that you need to bear in mind and to consider that it won't be easy. The most of the companies I've seen that abroad companies coming to Mexico, they are not that resilient. You need to have some special patience in Mexico if you want to succeed. So if you want to position your brand, your company, your product, whatever. So that was the first thing. And it took me kind of 2 years to achieve that goal. Even knowing the market, even knowing the right people, it is pretty tough because nobody wants to make a mistake trusting something that is not being proven, you know? So little by little, I was able to position my brand, to position my own name. And I would say that that was the most crucial thing for at least the first two years, to make my brand and product reliable.
And it's true. And in the end, you might have a brand that has established somewhere else, but to position it here is like starting from scratch. I mean, it's
Definitely it's completely different. That helped me a little bit because our brand in Europe, we have probably 70% of the market share in the specific industry that we work for. That helped a little bit. Even so, it was pretty tough to get business away from my competitors. You know, that's why I pointed out you need to be very resilient, not only in Mexico. I would say the dominant markets in LatAm are Brazil and Mexico, but are the toughest ones.
And Horacio, what has been your experience mostly, entering with a foreign brand or foreign culture into Latin America?
Yeah, great question. I mean, as Adán mentioned, patience is a key asset whenever you are endeavoring in a new country, a new culture. I do believe, however, that, for instance, coming to these events, meeting the people that are the first adopters of technology and willing to go beyond what is already established does help a lot. I also believe that relationships within the local market can open doors, and if they are not necessarily the end client, they might know someone who can be the end client. It's also, I mean, it's part of why I would be bullish this industry or the financial industry in Mexico in general is that you have a learning curve in terms of financial education in Mexico that has to be overcome. You have by different metrics, financial penetration in Mexico is really low. In terms of credit, as proportion of GDP, savings and investment products as a proportion of GDP, and that is lower than other countries in Latin America. So you have a lot of upside there. How you go about that and how you find people or clients that will be more willing to learn or are more knowledgeable about financial markets than the current level is also a key tailwind for our industry. So I would say that in the end, this is an industry that is ripe for both disruption and growth. On the disruption side, you have very, and I'm sorry to say, but yes, very mediocre returns from institutional investors and from current, let's say, saving products or from current investment strategies that the mainstream players can offer you. So they are ripe for disruption. And on the growth side, you will find that people are more interested in learning how to manage their own finances better, take a better control of their own financial destiny, and that is very exciting. Okay.
And one thing that you actually point out is, Latin America in general doesn't quite maybe have the education in terms of financial markets as obviously Europe, the United States has. And that's always a benchmark to enter a market, is how well does the consumer understand the product, and which leads us to another part that is, the darker side of this, where there's a lot of fraud and there's a lot of people who get taken advantage of that barrier. And and one of the things for us, the challenge as a payment facilitator is, number one, to facilitate the initial payment, because if the user is already ready to enter, the broker has done their job. They have convinced that this is the right broker that you've approached, and we're gonna service you. So from our point of view is, okay, now we need to facilitate the payment. But the same thing goes when the user wants to get out and cash out, and some of the brokers don't have that mechanism very well established. And one of the things that we do is we establish that payout. So the moment that anybody wants to cash out from their account, with 5 minutes, they're able to cash out into their local bank account. So anyways, those few experiences is, I think, what it's challenging to come into the territory in general. There's multiple currencies, different cultures, and all this thing we talk about. But again, it's also to find like their local partner and really understand that you need some type of foot in the ground. And us as payment facilitators, what we establish is we are the foot in the ground, at least for the payment, which is the most sensitive part. In the end, the sensitive part is my money safe? Is my money going to go to the broker? Is my money going to return to my account? So we at least try to solidify that. But a little bit, I want to go back, and Matt, maybe you can discuss what your experience. You guys are in Middle East, Asia. You've been definitely in emerging markets. This is a new territory for you. How do you approach this new territory?
Well, I'm gonna slightly contradict myself. So we approach it via localization, and when you have a British guy telling you that in Mexico, it doesn't feel very local, huh? There's actually a good reason as to why I'm here and why I'm at every single location that we're represented. It's about provenance, it's about regulation, it's about trust. Now, you can have local offices and you can have local employees. Are those people regulated themselves? Are they under the cosh? Are they, when things go wrong, are they accountable? Unfortunately, I'm probably the most accountable person I know. And why I come here is I want people to when they see EC markets, they see accountability. Number one. Number two, exactly what you just said. We've all got similar products. We've all got similar technology. So what differentiates us? It's being local, and it's payments, and it's being able to provide education. It's being able to give clients that kind of assurance that they don't have an internet relationship. They have a real brokerage relationship. Everywhere we've set up an office, every local regulation we have people on the ground, and that's absolutely key, right? The whole SEO, banner splashing madness of our industry, it only works so far. You need local partners. Your partners will educate, right? People don't trust you to educate as much as they trust a third party. Work with good third parties. That works for us every single time. You pay your introducers on time. You pay your clients on time. You stick to the rules. It's a winning formula.
And just to kind of go back a little bit on what you consider, for instance, I mean, there's obviously cultural differences and everything we've discussed, but what is the main challenge for you, particularly in Latin America? So you've obviously studied it. You've been analyzing it from afar. Now you've decided to enter, and we're picking on you, Matt, because
That's fine.
because you're the new guy in the region.
You can pick. Do you know what? You guys have all been through this in the past, right? What do you do when you first go to a region? You look at the real basics. How many people are there in Latin America? 660 million, right? What's the median age? It's 32. How many of those 32-year-olds live in cities? 85%. Of those 85%, how many own smartphones? 100%. So you've already got an enormous potential market. But people are not all interested in this product. It's confusing. You watch the news, you see things happening, but how do you possibly interact with this behemoth that is the world markets? And that can only be answered by people being explained to, but these products are complicated, right? They involve leverage. Right? Leverage is a complicated factor. It is. I mean, everyone understands borrowing money, but do they understand overnight financing? So you have to get down to the real nuts and bolts of the product. As a broker, you can't do that. You just can't do it on your own. So we look at the potential opportunity of the market. We're not the first ones here. Okay, so my initial market analysis isn't, wow, we've identified an amazing opportunity. This opportunity's been here a long time. I do think things have changed a lot in South America. Latin America, I think that we see a lot around the payment side that's really moved on. People don't want to use the banks. The banks are expensive. They're slow. They slow down operations for brokerages as well. You have lots of problems around currency controls, about currency devaluation. All of those complicating factors, they've begun to be conquered by payment service solutions. For me, that's the biggest change that's allowed us to come to work here more effectively. There's nothing worse than not giving someone their money back when they ask for it on time. And then so overall, it means that it's good for us to be here. We can use the model we've used globally here. It'll work. And we basically work on trust. That's EC Markets. It works on trust.
That's right. And establishing a name around that, which is great. And one thing that we've discussed before, and I want to get your idea, is you're in Mexico, of course, and you have an international company. What is your approach, or how would you suggest a company enters this market? What has been your experience? You're from Mexico, but you still need to sell across Latin America. What is a little bit of that experience been like?
Sure, Alex. I think Matt mentioned crucial points. First of all, partnership is one of those. Partnering with local people who understands the local market. As Mexicans, we are not easy. We are, yes, we could be warm. We could have very, very good attributes. Nevertheless, doing business is completely different. The Mexican and the Brazilian as well, and the Colombian as well, could tell you yes and never will tell you when. And that's a huge, huge problem, because from a business perspective, you are creating your pipeline, your opportunities, etc., and you are trying to size the value of the market, how much money you will need to invest, etc. So if you don't have this this in mind, probably your expectations would be so high, and nothing is going to happen in the first, second, third year, probably. Probably after the third, fourth year, you will start harvesting, So I think that's what my company did, partnering with me, considering that I was the proper guy to lead the business in the region, because I have always been in sales, so I understand perfectly my market. In time, I started to understand the Colombian one, and it took me a while. It wasn't that easy. I thought there was a pan-LatAm, a unique LatAm, and that is false. That is false. Each LatAm country is completely different, except Brazil. Probably we speak the same language, but it's not different. Our cultures are different, etc. And yeah, we surely share some attributes, as I already mentioned. But my suggestion would be partnering with local people, being patient, and not I mean, you need to have great expectations, but creating the right size of those expectations, I will say.
That's true. Great. And but again, have high expectations for your product, but don't be disappointed
Yeah.
if it takes you a little longer to crack into the market. I mean, and one thing is, especially in this market in Latin America, I would always suggest that you focus on one or two markets, enter that, really understand those two markets, because to attack all fronts is not, like you said, it's not a pan-regional, and to focus on Colombia and then, let me just focus on Argentina is like two different animals. And same thing with Mexico. If you were to attack Mexico and Brazil, is way different. So
That's exactly what I did. From the very beginning, I was responsible for the North Latin region. Nevertheless, I never took care of the rest of my region before succeeding in my own country. Once that happened, then I started to move to other countries. And that worked.
exactly. And Horacio, let me ask you a little bit. If you were to describe on the consumer market in Latin America, what advice would you have for players entering this market? What would be your description of the Latin American consumer market?
Good question, especially given that's everything that's going on in what's called now Liberation Week. Well, I would focus on a consumer that is avid to learn more about the world and not just what is happening in his or her own country. And if I may, I may take a 90 seconds to explain the seismic shift that is happening probably as we speak. These past few days, it's been basically there's been unprecedented volatility in years in financial markets. This is not your usual cycle where you expect a recession. You see a flight to risk-off assets. Here, what you're seeing in financial markets this week is basically an acceleration process of U.S. disinvestment. Meaning you have a drop in the dollar, you have a drop in U.S. equities, but U.S. yields are higher, or what you would say, there is a higher term premium. And I never expected to see such a dramatic shift in terms of what the U.S. exceptionalism would look like after a second Trump White House, but yet here we are. And it's created this new dynamic where you are used to seeing emerging market risks, just like geopolitical risk, just focused on, emerging markets. But now you're looking at the same dynamics, and maybe Matt can remember Liz Truss and what happened in the UK bond market. That's basically what happened earlier, just a few hours ago. So when you have such a challenging environment for trading, you do need to approach the Latin American consumer with a more sensible educational or thought leadership that can enhance their own trading on their own investment and strategy. That's definitely how I would go about it. I would take into account the political risks, the different regulations. I am sadly perhaps more depressingly more familiar with the pensions regulation here and not in other markets. But that's definitely you have something that you have to take into account. And given that this geopolitical risk, I would also advise to look at companies that are non-US based. Because if there is a geopolitical event that where the White House issues a ban on, I don't know, investing in Chinese assets. What is your US company or trading platform going to do? Then you have that door closed then. So you should have your options open as much as possible and have access to as many financial instruments as possible. Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because, in volatile times, if you really know how to trade and you're very educated, you can take advantage and do amazing. Make a lot of money even when the market goes down. You make a lot of money but you have to know what you're doing. So in these times, this is where sometimes you have to sit on the sidelines and watch the car crash go by, let it go by, and then get in. But yes, some people I'm sure will lose a lot of money just by trying to, anticipate certain behaviors. But as our great Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So in the end, all these crises, all these turmoils, global markets changing, there's always opportunity, right, out of this. And interestingly enough, I think Mexico somehow managed to stay under the radar of the chopping block of the recent one. So it's very interesting to see how particularly Latin America in the next few years will be or not aligned with the United States. And I would think so. I think that's the logical is for the Americas to kind of really get closer. And it's going to change dramatically the way that we even interact. Mexico for sure interacts with the United States, but even the other countries. And I think it's just an opportunity, not just for trade and for everything related to Latin America, but for traders here and everywhere in other countries. The dollar to Latin American currencies, I think, is going to be very interesting, and that is something to watch for in the future. I don't have a lot of time, but maybe we can take a few questions from our people here, our audience.
Sorry, Alex, just before then, I just wanted to step in a little bit about watching on from the sides as the lunatic in the north does what he does. The truth is there's no expert or junior trader who can trade these markets effectively. I mean, it's at the behest of one person. But what I do love about the products that are offered is it gives everyone the chance to have a go if they want to, right? There's a high chance you lose money at the moment, but there's also a high chance that you can make a lot of money, but at least you get a choice to do it. I think it's exciting. I think it's great that somebody in Mexico can trade Apple without having to buy the whole share, without having to open an account with a stockbroker. I think these things, in my experience, I spent 26 years in this market. It's for me amazing what it's done for retail traders. So I think it's an exciting time, albeit extremely risky. That's my disclaimer.
Absolutely.
Sorry, over to the question.
Any questions? Anybody from the audience that want to ask our guest? Right there, gentlemen, right there. You have a question?
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. Maybe an initial value on how you value the payer value on the different countries in Latin America. Your experience on how people manage to invest in Mexico and Colombia and Argentina, the value that your guys have been able to extract and see, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important when you assess the countries, the kind of the revenue potential from the customers. I mean, you look at the very basics. GDP per capita is a very simple way of going, okay, we have a country that's got $18,000, that's worth more than one that's got $9,000. But you have to look at so many different factors before just making such an arbitrary choice. What we try to do is we actually base it more on where our partners take us. Our partners guide us to the right type of client in the country rather than just blanket trying to attract retail. We look for clients who have longevity that can exploit our services to the best needs possible. But I think it's a very valid question. And brokers do take a value judgment on the country. It's not just population size, it's the value of the customer within that country for sure. Sorry, guys, if you want to.
Depending on the market, if we are referring to the FX market, again, depending, it's different for the Forex space versus my market, the FX. So we have some metrics published by the International Bank of Payments. So based on that, we decide where to invest. We don't have, even when we have offices around the world, we don't have offices in Colombia. Instead of it, I represent the North LatAm region because it's not that convenient to invest in Colombia due to the size of that market for my industry, you know? So we consider the volumes operated, the how many corporates, I would say with a decent operation, could be in that country, the financial system, how it's composed, how many market maker banks could be, how is the role of the central bank, how that goes in that specific country. So in Colombia, they have a strong control, while in Mexico it's more regulated, but the market is more open.
Any other questions? Awesome. Look at that. Time is 0 now. Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you enjoy your stay in Mexico. Well, you guys are from Mexico. And Matt, enjoy your stays in Mexico, wherever it may take you next.
Thank you, everybody, for attending this conference.